Bitcoin has pulled back to $68,000. What's happening? Where is this bull market? Is it the election uncertainty that's causing all these problems? I'll share my thoughts, the charts, and what other expert analysts are saying. Well, let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome into the Thinking Crypto podcast, your home for cryptocurrency news and interviews. I'm your host, Tony Edward. On your way in, please hit that subscribe button as well as the thumbs up button and leave a comment below. If you're listening on a podcast platform such as Spotify or Apple, please leave a 5-star rating and review. Folks, let's talk about Bitcoin because it pulled back significantly. It went below $68,000. However, when you look at the daily chart, we are still seeing higher highs and higher lows. However, this low that it put in is dangerously close to the higher low that was set before. It hasn't broken it and it hasn't been invalidated yet, but we have to make sure that we are looking at both the bullish and the bearish scenario. Now, I personally believe, based on the chart movements, based on what's happening with the DXY breaking down as well, that Bitcoin will continue to move upwards. But I'm also prepared for if this gets invalidated and then we have to go back to the drawing board. Now, from a macro standpoint, when we're looking at the, let's say, 6-month or yearly perspective, we are still on track in this bull market. There hasn't been any major invalidation. And as we've been seeing, Bitcoin has been crawling its way out of this accumulation zone. And it, of course, last week touched $73,000. And that's a very good sign. So it's knocking at the door to break out of that all-time high set earlier this year and then enter into price discovery. Now, of course, we can't really look at altcoins. We have to look at Bitcoin. It's the measuring stick that we have to use because the liquidity generally enters Bitcoin and then it flows down to the altcoins. That's not to say liquidity can come in directly to some altcoins. We've seen that, like Solana and SWI and so forth. But generally, for the entire crypto market to move, we need Bitcoin to have that strength and to bring in a ton of liquidity. So we have to pay attention closely to the charts over the next week or so because the election, as I've been telling you guys, is causing a lot of uncertainty and you're going to see a lot of volatility. And this is true for all markets. It's not just true for crypto. So once the election's out of the way, we're going to see less volatility in the market and people can start focusing on markets versus politics in the election and so forth. Here's what different analysts are saying. One analyst said the following: don't panic. This can be nothing but a casual bullish retest of its 230 days diagonal resistance, speaking of Bitcoin. And if you look at the chart here that they provided, you can see it is within the trend lines and the structure here. So the analyst said, if this holds, we can get continuation. If it fails, 64K and 60K are next. He says, personally, I bet on bullish continuation. I'm of the same mindset, not because I'm biased, but because of the technicals in the charts and what the macro is doing and what we've seen historically from a seasonal standpoint. But once again, there is a bearish case that if this fails, it could trigger a series of other events and we have to go back to the drawing board. So we want to keep it balanced. Now, even before Bitcoin broke down here, Crypto Wizard had shared a chart on October 29th, highlighting that this was going to be a normal move for Bitcoin. It would pull back to about 68K because it made a huge move up to 73K. And he had said at that point, the descending channel in Bitcoin has been broken out after 8 months. A breakout above 72K opens the door to a new all-time high to 82K. And he highlighted here a retest of that support level. So this was something that was not off the table or out of the conversation here. It was a possible scenario. It didn't mean it had to happen, but we're talking probabilities here. Now, Crypto Wizard also shared a macro chart here, zooming out, showing the different market cycles and their relation to the elections. So showing where we're at here for the 2024 election, showing where we were at in 2020 for that election and 2016 as well. And you can see Bitcoin had not really put in any major gains, mostly retracing to its prior all-time highs. That's pretty much where we're at. So we need this election out of the way. I know I keep repeating myself, but we've seen this before. This is not unusual. And the only thing that's a little bit different is that Bitcoin hit a new all-time high before the halving at the beginning of this year. So it put us ahead of schedule, but this slowdown and boring zone and accumulation zone is putting us back on track. So once again, no major invalidation of the bull market. I'm here to make money, so I don't have time to play games. I'm not here to lie to you guys to get views or whatever it is. I want Bitcoin to go to 150K, and that would be game changing, not only because I hold Bitcoin, but for altcoins. So I'm in the same boat as you guys. I know it can be frustrating. I know it can be painful, but this is where patience is so important in investing. Now, Jason Pizzino, who's a great analyst, guys, I highly recommend you follow him. He's on Twitter, but he's also on YouTube. I listen to a lot of his content. He said the US election 2024 update. It doesn't look like this US election will be a clear Trump win, which the markets, US stock markets and Bitcoin have been preparing for over the last week or so. We know this election's been quite tight, guys. Some of the polling and so forth show this. Now, I'm going to get a lot of comments. People are going to say, you're an idiot. Trump is clearly winning, right? People are in their own bubbles and they only want to hear things that validate their bias. The point is, until election day, the results are in, we don't know. It is not that clear. It's very tight. And I'm not saying Harris is going to win. Maybe Trump wins. But the point is, we don't know and we have to wait for the results. And we're not here to invest with our emotions and get emotional and worked up and triggered. Let's look at the data and let's look at what's happening. So Jason continues. He says, if Harris wins, the markets will likely freak out in the direction of the current trend down. However, they'll eventually realize that the massive amount of stimulus money coming will pump the markets once again. And this here, folks, what Jason is saying is the macro factors. People get so caught up in narratives and so forth. But at the end of the day, Bitcoin is not correlated to Trump. Bitcoin is not correlated to Republican or Democrat. Bitcoin has pumped under Obama, Trump, Biden, so on and so forth. It doesn't care who the president is. What it's correlated to is global liquidity and the money printer, folks, right? The money printer feeds global liquidity. The fiat system we live in, they will go back to printing money. I've been telling you guys for a year now, they cut rates, they go back to QE. It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. And that's what drives markets. Yes, there are other factors that drive the valuation and demand for stocks and different things because companies have great earnings, new technology, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, the main factor is the denominator, the US dollar, which they continue to debase and continue to print more of. And guess what they're going to continue doing, folks, as they cut rates and keep raising the debt ceiling? Print money. So Jason is saying in the short term, you may see some downside pressure because there's this narrative out there that Trump is going to be better for Bitcoin and crypto and so forth. But at the end of the day, Bitcoin and crypto will continue to move because it is correlated to the money printing. So watch the M2 money supply from the Fed. Watch global liquidity. That's what I'm looking at. Now, as I've said many times, Trump would, I think, be better for crypto businesses from a clarity standpoint, but asset prices are not dependent on Trump. So if you are running with that narrative, you're missing the mark. You're not looking at data. You're looking at your feelings, your emotions, your bias, your political bias, and so forth. And both Democrats and Republicans print money. That's this fiat system we live in. So Jason continues saying, so expect volatility while swings with upside to resume. He says, if Harris wins, dump a little range, then pump. If Trump wins, probably pump, then pump more. Both are still bullish, medium to long term. Both have the same end game, just a different path to get there. So this is what people who study data and analytics and stats are looking at, not their emotions, but what the correlation is for these asset prices. He says, overall, my analysis has not indicated any change in the cycle. Therefore, I expect higher prices with more volatility as it is the winner's curse phase of the 18-year cycle, something I've been covering for many months now. Now, be sure to check out his channel, guys. He covers a lot of stuff. And once again, this is not emotional. This is not politics. This is markets and liquidity and what the Fed is doing and what other central banks around the world are doing. So please understand me. I'm not trying to say don't go vote for the candidate you love or you want to vote for because there's many other issues to vote on. But when it comes to things like asset prices and markets, there are true fundamentals that you need to pay attention to and understand how they work. So I'm in full agreement with what Jason's saying here. Now, guys, quick word from our sponsor, and that is VeChain. VeChain is one of the top layer one smart contract platforms. They're working with many enterprises around the world to build Web3 technologies. Some of the great attributes of the VeChain blockchain includes it's secure, affordable, scalable, fast, and sustainable. And they work with big brands like Givenchy, PwC, Boston Consulting Group, BMW, Walmart China, and much more. I've been a VET token holder for many years, so I'm very bullish on this project. If you'd like to learn more about VeChain, go to vchain.org. Now, on the topic of politics, Vivek Ramaswamy's Strive launches a wealth management arm to bring Bitcoin to standard portfolios. Now, we know Vivek understands crypto. We know Trump is pro-crypto and much more. JD Vance and all these guys understand it. We're seeing a lot of TradFi folks are now launching an arm to invest in crypto, building with crypto, and much more. So Strive Enterprises, an asset manager co-founded by former presidential candidate and current Trump surrogate Vivek Ramaswamy, announced the creation of its wealth management business. The business aims to integrate Bitcoin into standard portfolios of everyday Americans and launches amid a corporate move and the closure of a $30 million investment round. Everybody's coming for crypto. They want it. And they're creating financial products. They're building with it and much more. It's pretty incredible. Now, check this out. U.S. government seeks to return $13 million in political donations from former FTX executives. This is interesting. The U.S. government has been given more time to negotiate with certain political action groups over the return of up to $13.25 million in donations made in the names of former FTX executives Sam Bankman-Fried and Nishad Singh. A recent filing shows the political groups in question are mostly Democrat-aligned and include Senate Majority PAC, Emily's List/Women Vote, and the Future Forward PAC, which received $6 million. Singh was recently sentenced to time served and 3 years of supervised release, allowing the former FTX engineering director to avoid prison time. So we're seeing some clawback here of those political donations. And this was a topic I remember speaking to Anthony Scaramucci about when I did an interview with him. And it's fascinating. Let's see how much more they pull back. And remember, Maxine Waters was hugging up SBF, blowing him kisses and stuff like that because he was doing big donations to the Democrats. Now, don't get me wrong, he also donated to Republicans, but a majority of his donations were to the Democrats. And that's probably because, Biden and the Democrats were in office around the time of when he was making his rounds in Washington, D.C. But of course, he was committing epic fraud, stealing people's funds and much more. And he was meeting with the SEC and Gary Gensler, and they did nothing to stop all this nonsense. But thank goodness, we're seeing some resolution here. The bankruptcy proceedings are happening where people will get back some money, and SBF is in jail. All of his partners in crime, Caroline and all these folks in jail. So the nature is healing, folks. Now, apparently there was some rumors that Tether was launching its own blockchain, and Tether CEO Paolo Ardoino cleared up the rumors, saying, I hear again few rumors about a Tether chain. Tether is not planning to build an official blockchain at this time. Simply different independent L2 solutions are working to support USDT for gas fees. So I don't know who started the rumor, but they're trying to say Tether was going to launch its own blockchain or whatever it is, but they said clearly they're not doing that. So that's the news, folks. Let me know what you think about the election and the markets and what's happening with Bitcoin. I think expect a lot of volatility as we head into tomorrow, Monday, and of course, Tuesday. And look, it's kind of like the Fed meeting weeks where you have a ton of volatility. We could probably see a lot of that this week. So you kind of have to let the dust settle and go into the following week. I've seen that historically with markets. You can't judge it the week after. There's just so much going on. So just be mentally prepared that you're going to probably see some wild swings. Maybe I don't want to say that's a guarantee, but be mentally prepared as an informed, educated investor, right? You want to be prepared for all these things so you're not rocking in the sea of volatility like a ship without an anchor. So I hope you guys understand what I'm saying here. And I'm saying this from experience because I've been through all of that and I had to learn my lessons and not moved by my emotions and what the markets are doing, but look at the macro, look at the charts, look at the technicals and what story and even on-chain data that we have in crypto. What story is that telling me? So let me know what you guys think. Leave your thoughts and comments below. A great way to support me in the podcast, guys, is to sign up for my free email newsletter on Substack. It's 100% free. Also, grab a copy of my book, Rethinking Crypto. It's available on Amazon in paperback and digital. Buy a copy for yourself. Buy a few copies for your friends and family. Give them as gifts this holiday. Help them to learn about this technology and asset class. And if you bought a copy already, please leave a 5-star rating and review. It will really help me out. Thank you so much. I appreciate you all, and I'll talk to you all later.